migration. So the people of Volta region will fight tyranny anywhere it raises its ugly head. And this is Adib Saani. Good morning. Adib, you're back on the line.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so I was asking, from where you sit as an security expert, what's your concern as well, or what's your take on the current posture of state government with regard to the deployment of military people in the Volta region and the OT region, for instance, and what the minority is saying, that it's an attempt to intimidate their team supporters from coming out in their numbers to register in this exercise?
Well, thank you very much. A very good morning to yourself and your listeners. Indeed, it is the work or the responsibility, I should say, of the government to ensure the safety of every Ghanaian, not just within the confines of the country, but even beyond. It is a social contract kind of theory. We give you our mandate, then you protect us. So in the first place, in the run-up to the election, the government should put in measures to ensure that the process is credible. So in the end, we don't have anybody from any side of the political divide or spectrum coming out to say, no, we will not accept this or will not accept that. Let's not forget what just happened in Malawi when Mutharika won, but the Supreme Court had to squash it, and I'm not sure we'd want to get to that level. However, it goes without saying that we need to be extremely careful with the protocols we're putting in place, because it has the tendency to make a certain part of the population feel alienated. Secondly, it has the tendency to create serious identity crisis if you're not careful. And the most disturbing bit of it is the rhetoric that is coming from political players in the country. My brother, definitely, if you see the presence of military personnel all over, to some extent you would be intimidated. I am not saying that they shouldn't prevent people from coming into the country to vote. Of course, they should prevent them. And so there's the need for some collaborativeness between the military and even the police and immigration and customs, so they are able to prevent that from happening. But the seeming over-militarization of the political process is definitely a cause for worry. And particularly because it is in the Volta and Otu regions which are perceived, or which indeed, I must say, are strongholds of the main opposition party in the country. So democracy doesn't have to be militarized. It doesn't have to be militarized, because definitely it will intimidate the people or other players from the other part of the political spectrum would feel harassed, and it doesn't augur well for our democracy. And so I am particularly very worried by the deployment of the military personnel, and also extremely worried and utterly dismayed by the comments made by Honorable K.T. Hammond on the issue, which I find extremely irresponsible, I find very unfortunate, and I find extremely retrogressive to our democracy, and should be condemned as such.
I have asked this question to another colleague of yours who is also a security expert, but if you were the president of the Republic of Ghana, what would you have done if you also felt the kind of tension that arose after the Supreme Court's ruling last week?
Well, I would engage more. You see, the thing is, I am a student and a practitioner of security and foreign policy. I have studied extensively about conflict situations, not just in Africa, even beyond Africa. But let's just limit this discussion to Africa. Most of the conflict situations on the continent is as a result of election-related issues. From Kenya in 2007, where things got so bad to the extent then President George Bush had to dispatch his Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, who arrived in Nairobi and gave "it will not be business as usual" speech. Then our former President J. Kufuor was the AU chair. He had to call on Kofi Annan of blessed memory to go and engage in something we call shuttle diplomacy between the Orange Democratic Movement and the People's National Union. But then things had gotten so bad that a lot of lives were lost. In Ivory Coast, between 2010 and 2011, we all witnessed what happened. That gave rise to a Dirufia mantra. Liberia, Sierra Leone, Burundi, Congo, and a whole lot of other hotspots on the African continent is due to a seeming lack of trust and confidence in the electoral process. And the problem is, if there's no trust in the electoral process, it can be the most credible, the freest, the fairest of elections, yet we would have a part of the political divide coming out to say, no, we will not agree because we feel the whole process was tainted. So I think going forward, there's the need for better engagement, not the kind of engagement that has been ongoing for some time now, where I come to you and tell you, I want you to tell me what you think of what I intend to do. Then you go like, okay, well, I think this way would be better, that way would be better. In the end, I tell you, all right, thank you for your input. However, I've made up my mind. That is no engagement. And I do understand also that engagement doesn't necessarily mean unanimity, but it means reconciliation. It means you and I meeting each other halfway. Even if it doesn't go according to my plan or according to what I perceived, still I'll be happy with the process. But the way things are going currently, there's a lot of mistrust, there's a lot of distrust, lack of confidence, and the kind of rhetoric coming out from the political class is transcending to their followers who are deliberately, consciously made to believe that someone is up to something. And so the next minute they come out to say, oh, we will not agree, things were not done well, then you would have them trooping into the streets and only God knows what will befall us. So my brother, I think we would have to take advantage of this window of opportunity, engage with the various political actors. Civil societies have a very important role to play in that regard. I expected that by now the president would have met at least security analysts or other actors, okay, especially that has to do with the security of the state in the run-up to the election. So we all can be brought on board. So when we are analyzing, we analyze strategically so we are able to calm nerves and make people have confidence in the process. Okay. However, currently it is not so. You see a lot of arrogance being demonstrated and exhibited all over the place in the media, on social media. Oh, come what may, there's going to be a new voters register and nothing you can do about that. That doesn't help in the electoral process. No. So I think, like I indicated, we still have that window of opportunity to engage more people, to engage more identifiable.
I mean, if you even go beyond that statement that you just talked about, that does not sit well. I mean, as far as the security of the nation is concerned, we have had the apex court ruling and directing the election management body to carry out this exercise as their mandate guarantees, and to allow every eligible voter to undertake the exercise, yet with a caveat, and the caveat is that subjected to CI 126, which has been passed in Parliament. So,
but if you can you please refresh me on the CI 126?
Or others to say, but to say that whether we like it or not, the exercise must come up?
Well, the thing is, we are a country that is governed by the rule of law. Instead of taking the laws into your own hands and coming out to do things that is inimical to the peace and security of the country, it is always advised that if you have if you have any cause for concern about any process, the courts are available to every citizen and even non-citizens. You can seek redress. And so the fact that this issue went to court in the first place is something I found refreshing. And the court gave its verdict. Some celebrated, some didn't. However, in the end, we all accepted the verdict of the court. And I'm particularly excited by the unanimity from all across the political divide for persons to go out, Ghanaians to go out and register to vote. So it is a good sign. I do appreciate the tensions associated with this year's elections, particularly because of the new voters register. And I must also indicate we still have the activities of vigilante groups because they still exist. Even though the political parties appended their signature to different documents and, are all happy about the passing of the anti-vigilantism and other related offences law and all that, still they haven't disbanded those groups. And I was perusing a document called Early Warning Mechanism. The African Union, they have the early warning mechanism, the ECOWAS, and even civil society like the West African Network for Peace, and even Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. And I perused a document developed for Kenya prior to their 2007 election that raised some concerns about the fact that, look, if these things are not taken care of, it has the tendency of marring the electoral process that could perhaps eventually lead to bloodshed. And there was a lot of similarities with what is currently happening in Ghana. One, the politics of identity. Two, zero-sum politics, where the winner takes all. I win, I have it all. You lose, you have nothing. Three, activities of vigilante groups, like in Kenya, they had the Mungiki, the Sambuat Land Defense Force, the Luo Youth, the Kalenjin Youth, etc. There's also serious issues raised in that document about people's trust and confidence in the electoral process, in the Independent Electoral Commission of Kenya. And currently, it is like that, okay? And a whole lot of other issues that I found quite compelling and to some extent scary. And so I think we all have a role to play. It is no accident that Malcolm X said the media is the most powerful tool. It has the power to make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent, and that is real power. We have a role to play. Chiefs, other opinion leaders like religious leaders, those of us analyzing too, we also have a role to play in safeguarding the peace and integrity of Ghana. However, the bulk of the role has to be with the political divide, with the politicians. They have to stop those irresponsible things they sometimes see on TV. Look, sometimes with all respect to Honorable K.T. Hammond, we overrate these people. We think they are the smartest, the most intelligent of all people, but sometimes they come on radio and on TV and say really extremely unintelligent things that I find extremely worrying. I must indicate. Okay? And I hope that going forward, these political parties would have mechanisms to deal with their own who say certain things that is inimical to the peace of the country. Okay, so at least in the end, we all safeguard our democracy, if not for ourselves, but for our children.
Adib, let me thank you. And you keep up the good job and enjoy the day.
Thank you.
Have a productive working day. So that was Adib Saani.